Hi, my name's Max, and I'd like to talk to you about myth. But before I get started, spoiler alert for films such as Finding Nemo, 12 Years a Slave, Guardians of the Galaxy, The Matrix, Interstellar, and The Martian. Sorry. What do you think of when you think of the word myth? Greek mythology, the Loch Ness Monster, Mythbusters? Well, not to be myth taken. Pause for laughter. All of those involve myth to an extent, but the myths I'm going to discuss need to be distinguished from false consciousness. Myths are often associated with falsities, then placed in opposition with science. People view science as facts and myths well as myths, but that's not exactly what they are. Janice Rushing and Thomas French describe myths as big stories. Myths are narratives, but not all narratives are myths. When I wake up, eat a sandwich, go to school, and eat another sandwich, that's a sad, sad narrative about my life, but it's not a myth. Myths are long, enduring stories that dramatize a culture's deepest beliefs and dilemmas. They tell of origins and destinies, are filled with heroes and villains, and educate the young into the society's values. So how does myth relate to rhetoric? Well, the myths which populate our discourse are determined by who we are as a society and what ideals we value. Myth is a powerful tool to move an audience. A myth can cause an audience to sympathize with a character or with a movement, especially when it's a familiar myth. There are countless different types of myths. Examples I will discuss in this lesson are the hero's journey myth, the Frankenstein myth, the American frontier myth, and more. These myths pop up in all forms of public address: speeches, films, novels, television, magazine articles. An example of myth in classic rhetoric is how Martin Luther King Jr. used his "I Have a Dream" speech to expand the American dream myth to include more than just white men. So while I could view myth in any form of public address, I will focus this lesson primarily on myth in film. The myth which has influenced cinema the most is the hero's journey myth, which we have already touched on in class a bit, so I'll be brief. The myth consists of three phases: separation, initiation, and return. This myth is so ingrained in cinema that films have a three-act structure where each act corresponds to a phase. This is true of all genres: comedies, dramas, animations, science fiction, and more. Here are three examples: Finding Nemo, 12 Years a Slave, and Guardians of the Galaxy. Three drastically different films with virtually identical structures. While we've already seen how the hero's myth can be applied to films, I would like to point out three pivotal moments in each and how they connect the films. In each film, the status quo is interrupted, which starts the separation phase. In Finding Nemo and 12 Years a Slave, the separation is literal. Nemo is taken by scuba divers and separated from Marlin. Solomon Northup is sold into slavery and separated from his family. In Guardians of the Galaxy, Peter is separated from his old life when he is thrown in jail. The initiation starts when our heroes are called into action and make a decision which launches them on the road to the climactic battle where they become heroes. In Finding Nemo, this is where Marlin and Dory find the address on the scuba mask and leave for Sydney to find Nemo. In 12 Years a Slave, this is when Solomon fights back against Paul Dano's character and is sold to another owner. In Guardians of the Galaxy, this is when Peter agrees to go with his other criminal friends to sell the orb. After these events, trials occur, but after the climactic battle, there's a return to the status quo from the beginning, although the status quo has improved. Marlin and Nemo are much happier and get along because they understand each other better. At the end of the film, Solomon is reunited with his loving family after 12 years. And Peter goes back to his space Indiana Jones-like ways, but now he has friends and a possible love interest to do it with. Now that we've established the majority of films fall into that mythic structure, we can look at how other myths are applied. When looking at films with a mythic perspective, you need to look for a dialectic between competing values. Ernst and Rushing used the Frankenstein myth to examine the tension between the feminine and the rise of technology in The Matrix. The Frankenstein myth comes from Mary Shelley's novel and details a dystopia where machines are a threat to humans because they have advanced so far. The myth is easy to see in The Matrix, but where the myth illuminates new insights into the film is when it examines the dialectic between the two values. In the Frankenstein myth, the female is crucial to the redemption of the hero. But in The Matrix, she disappears into a scene of technological images. While the film is meant to highlight both the feminine and the technology, the focus on special effects and technology caused the feminine to be subsumed. Rushing and Friends did a number of mythic analysis on film, which show aspects of the film not immediately apparent. Other examples include the Titanic, Rocky, Jaws, and more. While myths can reveal insights into film and create a sense of comfort for the audience, they can also be oppressive for legitimizing existing power structures or privileging one group at the expense of another. The American frontier myth, which is largely seen in westerns and now space films, is supposed to be an inspiring story of American optimism and adventure. But in glorifying our conquest of the West, it also justifies the genocide of countless Native American peoples. We see that currently in space epics. As our land-based frontier has been conquered, films moved into space, where we can search and destroy and or exploit other planets. Since the public is so familiar with the myths, they don't think about them when they see them in film, and they just go along with that. In order to combat this, we need to be aware of the myths so we can call filmmakers out and hopefully prevent future occurrences. Now that I've spoken of previous work and issues with myth, I would like to briefly touch on a case study where two films with similar goals failed and succeeded due to the tension between the need to explore space and survival. The films Interstellar and The Martian fit the hero's journey myth, but they can also be viewed through the lens of the American frontier myth. As noted earlier, when America ran out of land-based frontier, films moved into space. Interstellar reflects this clearly, as the plot is, our world is cooked, we need a new home. The Martian also focuses on searching another world, although the motives for the search are made less clear. Both films advocate for the need of more space travel and exploration, but to varying degrees of success. Much how The Matrix focused too much on its special effects and the second coming narrative with Neo, Interstellar focused too much on the action and drama. In the film, Coop's entire crew dies or is lost in space, he's betrayed by his friends, and he misses the opportunity to see his family grow up. While the film may try to say that the risks and sacrifices are worth the rewards, the question is never answered, as the film, in typical Christopher Nolan fashion, has an ambiguous ending. The Martian, while far less dramatic, shows that survival and overcoming obstacles is key. While Mark is trapped, not only is he striving to survive, but the entire world has come together to try to save him. The focus is away from dramatic moments and action and more on the hope. So while Interstellar had dramatic flair, its message for the need of more space travel and exploration actually becomes muddled, while The Martian's message was strengthened through the success of the American frontier myth. To recap, myths are narratives which reflect what we, as a society, value and what we fear. They can be used to effectively convey messages and gain sympathy, while they can also be misused and oppress others. Through mythic analyses of public addresses, insights not immediately apparent are revealed. They also give you an excuse to watch movies and say you're doing research. I hope you've enjoyed this lesson on myth.